Hello and welcome back to our broadcast as we touch base with our activism teams who are on the ground getting 50,000 views of our projects while we raise $50,000. And so we're about 50% of the way there to our fundraising goal. We do have a match going on right now, so get your donations in and those will be doubled. So an additional match, our match of this campaign is generally the views per dollars, but we do have an additional $5,000 from a generous donor who is matching your donations right now. I'm going to head over to the Ontario team. They have been, as you've seen, hard at work all day today, and it is getting towards the end of their day. You can see it's starting to get a little bit darker out there. So probably a little less views coming up in the next bit here. So we will get a couple testimonies from you guys. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of views over here. There are tons of people walking past our signs. And we've had some good conversations too. So Alyssa's going to share a testimony and then Miranda's going to share one.
Yeah, so just a couple of high school guys. I asked them what they thought about abortion, and one of them said, well, it depends on the age. So I pointed to a 10-week aborted fetus and said, well, what about this age? And he said, well, is it conscious? So we looked at how consciousness is a function that we gain at a certain age, but doesn't determine our human rights. And then when I asked him again, if a being isn't conscious, is it okay to kill them? He said no. So I asked his friend what he thought, and he said, well, if a 14-year-old gets pregnant and doesn't have the money to raise a kid, isn't it okay for her to abort? So we looked at how we would treat a 14-year-old with a born kid in that situation, how we would help her, but not kill her child. Then when I asked them if they thought abortion was ever okay in any circumstance, they said no.
Fantastic, love it.
And Miranda's going to share one as well.
Perfect.
I talked to an older man who was pretty passionate, just like, what are you guys doing? Kind of thought we were a bit crazy. Started talking about some religious argument about when the soul enters the body and how that relates. And it ended up, we were talking about how when the mother's life is in danger, he thought that 100% we should be able to have abortions. And so I talked to him about how, yes, there are times when we need to deliver the baby early if there's a complication with mother's health, but we can deliver that baby whole instead of dead and in pieces, and do everything we can to save both. And he was just like listening and tracking and getting a lot more friendly. And by the end, he shook my hand and he asked for a pamphlet and he said, "The Lord bless your work." And he was really encouraged.
Great, fantastic. So good to hear. You guys are towards the end of your choice chain now today, or are you guys wrapping up?
Can you repeat that? It's very loud over here.
Are you guys just getting ready to wrap up for the day now?
Yes, yeah. So we're tracking up right after this. Yeah.
Fantastic. For those of you who know us, you know these two are part of our regular ongoing staff. I got to hang out with them a little bit over the past couple weeks as I was out in Toronto. And so, yeah, so if you ever want to connect with us, get trained on how to have good pro-life apologetics, connect with our team. They are on the ground in Toronto and be happy to connect with you and train with you. Miranda works with churches out in the area as well. So if you have a church that might be interested in working with us, touch base with us and we will connect you with Miranda. And we have those counterparts here in Calgary too. So, so thank you for everything that you're doing and thank you for your updates through the day.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we are bringing back Cam Cote. Earlier you saw him out in the truck and he has since traded places on the truck there. We have Alex out there now. They did send me a picture, which I was going to throw up earlier as they were switching places. But Cam is our Western Outreach Director, and he's been working with our not only our teams here in Calgary, but also in Vancouver and in Winnipeg. They have been on the ground as well. We had choice chain happening out in Winnipeg, and I've heard they've got testimony there that's going to be coming. So don't think that's coming in yet today. We will catch up that testimony later and definitely share that with you because we've heard that on campus there they had some great response. And then as well, we have a vehicle choice chain happening out in Vancouver, but we definitely have more room for growth in those areas. So I'll throw it over to Cam to share a little bit more about the initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Loretta. So as many of you who have been tuning in through the day have seen, a large part of our outreach is happening in our two core hubs, which would be Calgary and the Greater Toronto area. But we do have these incredible initiatives as well. And I think that they deserve a special shout out, because while in Calgary, Loretta, you and I, we've got 8 or so staff members that are in and out of the Calgary office almost every day, kind of thing. We have a great community and opportunities for collaboration, that kind of thing. Same thing in Toronto, whether they're split between the Mississauga and Brantford offices, whatever it may be. Our initiative folks are absolute champions because they work so independently. So Kyle Coffey, who came on staff end of 2017, early 2018, leading our Winnipeg initiative. It was the first time we launched an initiative, and he's doing incredible work out there. He's got a very, very committed volunteer team that certainly took a lot of, as so many did, blows during the COVID pandemic, with a lot of his volunteers either moving away or moving into different seasons of life, that kind of thing. Kyle's been running such an amazing ship in Winnipeg, I should say. I was recently out there just a month ago or so doing a crash course with a couple more incredible volunteers. And so Kyle is doing outreach in the Winnipeg area. He does a lot in the surrounding communities as well, Steinbach, Morden, Winkler, many of the other communities. He's a native of Dauphin, a little bit further north, and did his schooling in Brandon University. And so he's got connections all over the place. He's striving to work with as many churches and other pro-life entities as he can. And so if you're in the Winnipeg area, if you know folks in the Winnipeg area, Kyle is leading training workshops and mobilizing people for all forms of outreach in the area. Absolute champion. And the same goes for our colleague Kateri Kiras in Vancouver as well. She has kept up the tradition of incredible young women who've been leading the Vancouver initiative, certainly one of the largest metropolitan centers in Canada. And she did an internship with Blaze actually back in London. I don't remember exactly the year, 2019, I want to say, before the whole pandemic began or something like that. And she's from the Vancouver area, the Lower Mainland area, and she, together with a team of wonderful volunteers, intern alumni, her sister Rachel, alumni Carmel, Attila, so many others, have been doing incredible work in the Vancouver area, because this is one of the most vital areas. Vancouver is such a weird spot. For anyone who's never been to Vancouver, I'm sure that you've heard like lots of different headlines where like it's almost the Florida man equivalent in Canada, where like people in Vancouver do some of the weirdest stuff ever. It's a hub for progressives and all that kind of stuff. But there's also a tremendous Christian community throughout the Lower Mainland as well. And so Kateri works with churches. She's doing some work with a couple high schools right now as well. Actually, she's working with several of the local community-based pro-life groups that have been established there for a long time too, offering training, mentorship, support, and getting more and more people doing these effective engagement strategies. She's contributed tremendously towards our engagement numbers in Western Canada. Kateri and the entire team out there are wonderful. And I wanted to highlight one other, or a couple other people that tie into both of those. So I talked about Kyle in Winnipeg, and Loretta, you can cut me off as soon as you want. I can go on all day gushing about our staff out here in Western Canada, and ultimately the staff across the organization. But I'll gush a little bit more. So Kyle, as much as I say he's largely a one-man operation, he gets a tremendous amount of support from Rose, who is from the Winnipeg area as well. She's now not immediately in Winnipeg, but she does an awful lot of background support, lining up crash courses and talks, and kind of coordinating with a lot of the supporters in the Manitoba area. And so if you're out there, you're probably very familiar with Rose and the role that she plays in keeping the train on the tracks, as it were. And similarly tied to the Vancouver initiative, she's not in Vancouver anymore. Kana Mendez Campbell's a great friend of ours. She's been tied into the CCBR community for a really long time. For a long time, she helped run the internships in Eastern Canada before her and her husband moved to British Columbia. And now they're living in Kamloops. And Kana's been working on a really cool initiative that we're really excited to launch next year to the public. So a lot of people have gotten more and more familiar with online learning. Not only through the pandemic, but even before that. I know that I was taking edX courses and other flex courses online to help with my role here as outreach director. Kana's been building a very comprehensive online course for pro-life apologetics and strategy. This course is going to be very in-depth. I would anticipate that it'll take the average person maybe 30 to 50 hours to work their way through the content and get all of the meetings and feedback and one-on-one support from facilitators and all that kind of thing that will give people a very, very high level look at effective pro-life strategy and apologetics. It'll give them the opportunity to learn and be mentored by many of the various CCBR staff members across the country. And we really hope that there's people plugged in with university pro-life clubs, even conventional pro-life organizations that are looking to increase their capacity to have really good conversations and start piloting new programs in their community. We really hope that this course gets a lot of uptake in the new year. So we're really excited about that. Huge shout out to Kana, who's been looking after a lot of that. And there's lots more that I could go into, Loretta, regarding church outreach with Virginia White here in Calgary, dealing with churches throughout Western Canada. Jeff Owen, who came on to do a testimony a little while ago, he's our new community outreach coordinator, who'll be working with community groups throughout Western Canada to implement our strategies in more than just our offices and initiatives, but also volunteer-led pro-life groups across Western Canada. It is an
and
exciting
some of those things as well are what Miranda is working with and Chris are working with in the Toronto area as well. So it's good to have both teams in growth in both sides of things. So yeah, it's great to see some, like, even though we don't see a physical representation of some of those initiatives on this call, getting a little bit of background from your experience working with them on that. We also have, like, the Vancouver team is actually in the next half hour here jumping out on a vehicle choice chain, as well as our Calgary team is getting ready to head out on a vehicle choice chain right now as well. Do you mind just touching briefly on what vehicle choice chain is and how that looks and why we do that particular project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spoke earlier today, for anyone who tuned in, a little bit about the Truth Truck and how it really helps with that first stage of conversion, right? The widespread discomfort and people anchoring considerations about the abortion issue with the very real, very human victims of this injustice. And that's exactly what Vehicle Choice Chain does as well. That we're reaching people on their commute home, where we're intentional about where we set up our vehicle choice chains, our banner locations. Unfortunately, some people will have seen the banners that we do in Eastern Canada. Unfortunately, the prairie provinces are just too windy to be able to sustain what equates to a gigantic sale. And so we do vehicle choice chain a little bit more manageable on the prairie provinces, and showing the reality to vehicle traffic on their way home in busy, slow moving traffic where it's not only incredibly safe, but there's a lot of opportunity for people to be thinking about different things. A lot of people are hitting their way through their podcast queue, listen to the radio maybe, or whatever it may be. And there's an opportunity similar to what I talked about for Truth Truck, of engaging people in a passive capacity while they have opportunity to engage with the topic. And so getting them thinking about the reality of abortion, anchoring their considerations around this in more than just abstract philosophy of, am I pro-choice, am I pro-life, but rather, that's a tiny human being who's been killed by abortion. What do I think about that? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is that really the way that we want to be responding to difficult pregnancies? Is that the best that we can do? Can we actually solve problems by doing that, by killing an innocent preborn child? And so vehicle choice chain is great. Where we're able to set up is often catching folks on their way home from work before they get into their home communities, right? Where so many people are going to school in their home communities and whatnot. So we're reaching not only single folks, but also parents on their way to pick up their children or after they've picked up their children, because we're getting them after a major thoroughfare before they get into their home neighborhoods, that kind of thing. And so we're, again, hitting our target audience, hitting the people that are driving the vehicles before they've picked up any passengers, and getting them thinking in this kind of open area where they're able to really chew on the issue of abortion now in a much more concrete way, rather than the abstract headline kind of stuff that they might see on social media or in the newspaper kind of thing, of the concrete victims. And so it's a fantastic project for anchoring considerations and priming people for a conversation that they might have on a street corner or on their doorstep. It's amazing the impact that it's had, especially as we're doing more door knocking here in Calgary, where as we've been able to ramp up the volume of views that we're achieving through Truth Truck and Vehicle Choice Chain, the number of people who we meet at the doorstep who've actually thought in some capacity about the issue of abortion, whereas years ago, before we'd had this coverage of the city, for a lot of people, the most common response to what do you think about abortion had been, I've never thought about it before. I don't really know, or like, what do you want me to say kind of thing. Whereas now, after they've thought about it a little bit, they've got something anchored in their mind, which is a much better starting point than nothing, because I mean, we're certainly happy to talk to people who've never thought about abortion before, but having that consideration in there before is certainly key to advancing the conversation in a much more meaningful way.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for some insight on that. And we look forward to hearing from our team as well, as they are heading out there right now to do those vehicle choice chains. So thank you so much for joining me, Cam. And yeah, have a great evening.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. That was Cam Cote. If you don't know about the Pro-Life Guys podcast, he is the host of the Pro-Life Guys podcast. You should check that out. You can hear more from him. He's got lots of great insights into activism on the streets, because he's had many of those conversations himself. And as well, he brings on many guests onto the podcast as well, who have a whole variety of experience on the issue of life. So do tune into Pro-Life Guys podcast. For today, we do have a couple more hours left of our projects today, and we are still fundraising our goal. I haven't checked in the past couple minutes here, but we are well on track for our $50,000 goal, and we're definitely well on track for our 50,000 views of our projects today. So please donate, endthekilling.ca/donate. You can also send e-transfers. Those links and stuff are on our posts, so you can check that out and donate, and just partner with us so that we can continue to do these projects throughout the year. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll check in again next hour. Take care.